Hi everyone, welcome to another Figma series we are going to start, and this is basically 100 days UI design series, and I received a lot of requests from you guys to keep continue. We did some challenges in the past and basically I decided to start it from scratch. In this tutorial we are focusing on auto layout component and we will try to complete all the necessary aspect of the Figma. So this is basically brand new and the technique is completely new. Hope you will like the journey. So let's start. Okay, so today is the first day and the challenge is to design login experience in Figma. Okay, so press F key on the keyboard and from the right side we will select iPhone 16 preset and press Shift 2 on the keyboard to zoom to selection. Now let's double click and rename this. So today is the day 1 and the challenge is to design login experience. So after renaming, now select artboard and from here layout grid, click on the plus and let's change from grid to column and let's make this one 4. For the opacity let's make it 5 and for the margin and gutter let's use 24 for the board, and I think instead of 4 we will use 2 columns, so let's use 2 and this is how we can create our grid. Okay, now we will click on the assets and inside the search let's type for the status bar, and here we have the status bar from the iOS 18 and let's grab it to the artboard, center line and align it to the top. Let's turn up the background. We don't need white background here because we will change the background. So this is our status bar and now we need to create our background. Okay, so now we will press O on the keyboard and we will select ellipse tool. Now click on the canvas and Figma by default will create 100 by 100 ellipse. Let's resize this to something like this, and if you want the same dimension, so let's try 392 for both to make it perfect circle. Okay, now let's change the color. So we have color preset. Let's try this indigo for this side and let's duplicate this by option key and let's make it pink for the other side. Okay, so now we have these two circles. Let's send it to back here. So we need status bar on the top. Let's lock this and now we have these two circles. Press R on the keyboard to select create rectangle. So again click and 100 by 100 rectangle created. Now simply drag this and let's make this white for now and let's drop the opacity, so 80. Click on the effects and also click on the background blur. Let's try to use 50 and let's drop the opacity. Okay, now simply change the color. So instead of pure white, let's slightly make it bluish, something like this. So this is how we create our background. Now let's quickly rename. So this is overlay blur and this one is pink and this one is indigo. Now let's group this and rename this background. So this is how we create our background. Let's lock it. Now let's create our logo and input. Okay, so now as we can see we are on the page 1. So let's quickly rename this to UI design and let's create another page for the component. So if we create any component, so we will keep it on the separate page and we will keep the UI in this page. Okay, and now select the background. So for the background it is good practice to convert this to component and use the instant of the main component. So by pressing option command K, or you can use, we can create component from here. So I will use the shortcut key by pressing option command and K. Okay, so this is how we create our component. Now simply duplicate this and select the master component, right click and click on the move to page components, and as we can see now we move our first component to our separate page and here is the instant of this master component. Okay, so every time if we change our master component here, so as we can see, like I change the color from this to this red color, and as we can see our instant will update. So it is a good practice to keep it on the separate page. Okay, so I have already the logo. I will just paste it inside, and as we can see now we can simply change the color. So first let's apply our this indigo color from color palette which we use for the background and this purple color for this side. Okay, so this is how we created our logo and color it. Now let's convert this to component by pressing option command K. Let's properly rename this to logo and we don't need to use the master component, so simply we will duplicate this, right click and click on the move page to components, and we will keep the master component here and let's organize it. So our logo is completed. Let's slightly blur the background. So let's click on it by pressing command key, so it will select the specific layer and click on the blur option. Try 100, look good. Okay, so let's slightly modify the background. Let's see how can we color it, so then we can move to input design. So let's double click and this is basically the instant, and let's click on it so it will navigate us to the main component. So I have these bright colors here and let's apply it. So let's see how it can look. Okay, so I think if we can change Now click on return to instance. I think let's increase the opacity 80, and for this let's change the color to white, some light color shade. Okay, so we can again select the background and right click main component and click push changes to the main component. So that is how we can local changes and apply it to the main component. Now double click, and as we can see, changes apply to the main component. Bring this down and click on return to instance, so our background is looking perfect. Okay, now press shift 0 so we can zoom to 100%, and press shift G to turn on grid. And now select type tool, click. Let's change the typography. So here we can change this to funnel sans, which is Google font, and we will use for this. So let's make it semi bold and let's try 14. Okay, and for the color let's use this floating tape color, and let's duplicate this. Let's change this to align it to the left side both. Okay, so make this one regular, and for the size let's make it 16. Okay, and for this color let's make this one to label. Let's try this tertiary. I think this is slightly dim, so let's make it secondary. Okay, and now press shift A to convert this to auto layout, and here we can first apply the white color, turn off grid. Okay, now as we can see, we apply the auto layout, and here we can see this height is 38. So let's increase top and bottom padding, so let's make it 16 for both sides, and let's slightly round the corner. So I think it is looking good, so we will leave it 8, and let's turn on grid again, make the same width to the grid, and now align it to the left side. Select both input and label. Now convert this to auto layout, and here let's reduce the space to maybe 8, and as we can see, this is how we can create our input. So let's rename this to input, and let's convert this to component by pressing option command K, press command D. Now right click, move to components. Okay, so now press shift 0 on the keyboard and zoom into 100%. Slightly modify the input field, so select input field and drop the opacity. So let's try 70%, and let's add stroke, so let's make it white. Okay, and let's leave it 100 for now, and as we can see, here is some glossy effect. Now let's click on the effects and click add, and this time we need to add background blur. So for the background blur, we will try to hide the number. Let's make it 30. As we can see, now it's slightly blur the background here. And also one thing more, let's add click and add drop shadow. So for the drop shadow, let's try to use 8, and let's make it 24. For opacity, let's make it 5%. This is how our input will look like. Okay, so now simply we need to right click inside main component, click on the push changes to the main component, and now these changes apply to our master component. So this is our instance. So now we can simply change the input label and text. So for these changes we need to slightly modify master component. So for this, let's click on it, and from this file click on the arrow. Here is our component. Select and click on the add property. So this time we need to select text property. So for this, let's type label and create property for the input. Now select input and assign this to this property. Okay, click, and now our input label is assigned to this property. So we need to create the same property for the placeholder text. So click and click on the text property, and this time let's rename this to input text and create property. Double click and select this text, assign this to input text. Okay, now select and click on the UI design. Okay, so let's now check, and as we can see, here is our input label and input text. So for the label, we will rename this to email. For this text, let's type. Now we have changed our instance. Okay, so now we need to create the password field. So for the password, we will do the same thing but slightly different, because we want one input as a default, so which is not active, and one will be active. So let's create the password one active field. Let's click on the input, do the same thing, click on this, and it will take us to the master component. And this time we need to create another variant for the active. So let's click on the plus and select variant, simply duplicate. So this is variant 2, and for this one we will select active, and let's rename this to type. So this one is default and this one will be active. So for the active, let's simply add stroke. Okay, so for the stroke, let's make it 2%, and for the color, let's pick this blue color for now, and we will see inside our design. Let's change this text. This is only 5, so it means that it's in the typing mode, and change the color. So let's deactivate, select and apply the same color here. Okay, and now let's check it inside or design. So let's click on the UI design page. Now let's simply duplicate this with the option key, select both and convert this to auto layout. Let's define the spacing, so 24. Let's see how it is looking. Yeah, it's looking good. Now we can simply change from default to active, and as we can see, now we can simply make this one to password. Now we assign the property, so we can simply select it enter your password, email address, so we will only type pipe here. So as we can see, we can change the password text here and the same active property here, and we have changed it to active mode. So now this is how we create our active field. Okay, so one little change, double click and let's go to the master component, and we have applied, as you can see, we apply a drop shadow. So for the drop shadow, let's change the color to this blue and make the opacity to 10%. Let's see, return to instant. As we can see, this is slightly active, so we will use. Okay, so now inside password we need to show and hide the password. So for this we will do like click on this and select master component, and let's create another property. So select main component, click on the plus, and this time we need to select boolean property. We will rename this, and by default it will be turn off. And now select our input we need here. Let's click on the asset and let's search for the eye icon, and let's see eye off. So we need this icon, so let's select it, place it here. So now as we can see, we can change, like 48 is slightly big, so let's try 20, and 20 is looking good. So also let's change the color. So for the color we will use primary, but as we can see now these are in auto layout in hug, so we need to make this one to fill container. Select, and instead of hug we will make it fill container. So now as we can see here, our eye icon is now it's taking the full space, and this is hug, so it's looking perfect. Now let's double click, and as we can see here is the spacing 8, so let's try to make it 16, so we don't want to distract by typing. So now let's click on it and return to instant. It's looking good. So now we have hide and show icon. Okay, so now we need to create forgot password link, so let's reuse this instant. So let's double click and duplicate it, and let's bring it down. So first we need to detach the instant, so we don't want to reuse the same instant. So let's first ungroup by shift command G, and let's delete this. Now also let's remove left and right padding, so let's make it 0. Remove fill and both stroke. Select both this input and this text, press shift A, convert this to auto layout, and let's make it the gap 0. Okay, so now as we can see we will make color slightly darker. Maybe we can use the link color, but let's try to use some dark color. Okay, so this color is fine, so let's rename this to, make it 14, and also semi bold. So this is how perfectly position or forgot link. Now let's create primary button. I have already created a button set in my recent videos, and if you want to know how I create this, you can visit to my channel, and here as we can see I have created a dedicated video for the buttons. And also if you have any confusion regarding the input field, so here in this short video I created a detailed video for the input field, and this is one is for the button. So both videos are available for the detailed instruction, and if you want to know how I create this, so I will also paste the link in my description, and you can check link for the both videos. Simply I will select the button, copy and paste it in my design, and let's modify it. So just copy, paste, and as we can see here is our button. Okay, so let's quickly change the text. So the text will be log in, and for the style we need only text, and also instead of hug we will use fill container and center line. Also unlink the color, and for the color we will use the dark blue for now, and let's add one slight change. So let's click on the effects and click on the drop shadow, and inside the drop shadow let's change the color to the same blue of the button, and let's make this one to 10, 20, and to make 40 subtle effect for the drop shadow. And this is how we create our button. Now let's create our sign up link. Okay, so now we need to create two buttons here, for one for Google and one for Apple. So for this we need to simply copy the email text and let's paste inside. Let's bring this down here, make this auto width, and let's type or. For the size let's use 12, and for the color make this label. Yeah, here is label secondary, so this is looking good. Center line, now we need create line, so let's turn on grid in this size. I think it's looking perfect. Let's quickly change the color to label tertiary to make it very light. Let's turn off grid, and as we can see here is our color. Now convert these both to auto layout by pressing shift A, and let's see if it is center line. Yeah, center line, which is looking good. Let's make this to fill container. Let's duplicate this. Now center this, align it here. Okay, and now press Command X and paste in this auto layout frame. So here is our separation, and now let's create Google and Apple button. For this, let's select same button. Let's duplicate this. As we can see, we can change this to symbol. Now let's duplicate it again, select both and convert this to auto layout and make it horizontal layout. Next, we need to copy the style from this. So press Option Command C and select both buttons and Option Command V. So this is how we can copy style and paste. So center line. Okay, so now I am inside SA Pro library, and as we can see, we have all icons. So let's search for the G for the Google, and let's use this. So select copy inside Figma. So this is basically text layer. Now double clicks and paste. So we have copy and paste our Google logo. Now let's do the same thing for the Apple logo. And we can simply select both symbol and let's change the color. So let's try some soft color. Let's search for the gray. So gray, maybe this gray is fine. So Google and Apple logo. And for the typography, let's make it slightly bigger. So let's use 22 MP size. Okay, so now let's move on to the bottom section. Okay, so I changed my mind for the logos and I changed it to the color logo. So I downloaded Google and same for the Apple. So now it is looking perfect. So for the bottom, let's duplicate this with the option. Now let's type. For the sign of text, let's use the same, the blue one. Okay, and for this text we will make it light gray. So let's try, this color is looking good. So okay, now let's center line, and this is our footer. Okay, now let's try to select the logo and the center content and the footer content. So select these three and press Shift A on the keyboard, and let's adjust the spacing. So let's try to use 96, and let's see if it's working. Center line and also vertical and horizontal both to center, and let's slightly bring this down. So let's use 24. I think 24 looking good. And also I have created the gradient from this color, and let's apply it to our logo. So our logo slightly looking off. So I will press Option Command and C and select this, press Option Command V, and also same thing for this one. And this is our logo, so it's looking perfect. I think we are ready to move to the dark mode. Okay, so before moving to the dark mode, let's quickly change this. I noticed that this is regular, so let's select the text, and inside body regular, let's click and make it emphasize. So now it's more prominent. And now let's move to the dark mode. Let's duplicate the same artboard. Let's rename this. So let's make it. Okay, so now let's select dark mode and press Shift 0. So as we can see, for the dark mode we need to start from the background. So let's select background, and as we can see, we have used components, and this is the instance. So let's click to go to the main component. As we can see here, we have this background, and we can simply create another variant. So let's duplicate this. For this one, let's try dark, and let's rename this to type or maybe mode. Okay, so this one is default, so let's make this one is light and this one is dark. So now let's select and let's make this color black. Instead of pure black, let's try this color. So we will do some experiment here, and as we can see, this is now dark. So let's click on the return to instance, and let's change from light to dark. And as we can see, we have changed background. So change the color of the status bar. So let's make this white. Okay, and same thing for the logo. Let's click and go to the main component, and here we can simply create variant. So this one will be dark and this one will be light, and let's rename this logo light and dark. Okay, so for the dark, let's try darken the color, something like this. Okay, and click on the return instance, and here logo light and dark. So now as we can see, we can also change the color. Let's leave it like this, and we will change the background color later. Now let's click on the input field, and from this file click on the arrow, and here we simply need to create another variant, and this time we will rename this to, let's create dark, and same thing for this one. Let's make this one is dark. Okay, so now let's simply select light one. Okay, let's check this. This is dark. Okay, so select both label and make it white, and now let's click on the return instance, and here we can simply change it to dark, and here let's make it dark, and for the length let's make it white. So let's type, as we can see, we can type here. So let's type white, and the color will be changed to white, which is cool. Let's select this text and let's try white. let's try white for both, and let's slightly dim the opacity, so make it 20. I think 20 look good. Let's make this 50 so it is visible. Yeah, it's looking perfect. And also let's change color of this text to white, and we will adjust it later. Okay, so now let's select the background, and for the background we can simply change color here. Let's make it 95, and for this let's make it 20% and also 20%. For the text, let's make it white and 50%. Okay, and now select this. Let's drop the opacity to 20%, and if we make this white, and also the selector, make it white and drop the opacity here 50%, and also select, make this white. So let's unlink this and make it white. I think 20 is fine, so let's leave it 20. And as we can see, now it's looking better, but the input is slightly light, so let's drop the opacity to, I think 70% look good, so let's leave it 70. Let's copy this style by Option Command C and Option Command V for both, and select both, center line, and select Apple logo, and here we just simply need white and drop the opacity slightly. So I think 70% look good. Okay, but I'm still not sure about the background, so let's make it 90. I think 90 look good. Here we can change the logo. So now as we can see, we can simply, like, we have the logo dark variant, so we can right click and select main component, push changes, and also select main component and push changes. So now we have created separate component for the dark mode, and we can simply push the changes. So this is not component, so it's okay, leave it like this. And for the white, let's drop the opacity to maybe 50%. Okay, and I think link looking good. And I think let's try quickly some colors, and let's see if we like something. So let's try this purple color. Let's leave it the blue one, and I think I like this one. Okay, so we have completed our day 1, and the challenge was to design login page, and we did both light mode and dark mode. Hope you liked the video. You learned a lot of things from the video. Let me know in the comments. And also you can download these files from downloadfreebie.com, and these are available for free. You can download it and reuse it. And stay tuned for the next tutorial. Please like the video and share, subscribe. Thank you.